In 2015, Pledis Entertainment had a problem. They had 13 trainees ready to debut. They had a concept. What they didn't have was the budget to support it. No A-list producers, no big-name choreographers, no full production team to shape the group. Most companies would have delayed the debut. Pledis did something else. They gave the trainees a practice room and told them to figure it out. What came out of that room started to change how people looked at idol groups. '17 debuted on the 26th of May 2015, and from the very first release, something felt different. The songs were written by the members. The choreography was created by the members. The visual direction was shaped by the members. 13 boys were running their own creative setup from inside a practice room in Seoul. The structure they built was also different. 13 members split into 3 units: a hip-hop unit for rap and production, a vocal unit for harmonies, a performance unit for choreography. Each unit had a leader, and each leader carried responsibility beyond performing. In the end, every creative decision came back to the members. Woozi handled the music from the start, building a sound that stood out. Hoshi led the choreography, creating stages that relied on tight synchronization. Vernon, S-Coops, and producer Bumju worked on lyrics and arrangement. Every unit contributed to every release in ways most groups don't. This level of involvement didn't come from trend. It came from necessity, and in trying to make it work, 17 built a system that could run on its own. The results didn't show up overnight. The early years were quiet, the fan base grew slowly, but the foundation kept getting stronger. By 2023, it was clear. Their album FML sold 6.4 million global units, becoming the best-selling album worldwide that year. They performed at Glastonbury, becoming the first K-pop act on the pyramid stage. Pharrell Williams invited them for a Louis Vuitton performance in 2025. Their total album sales passed 45 million, and in 2024, UNESCO appointed them as its first Goodwill Ambassador for Youth, where they launched a $1 million global grant supporting youth creativity and well-being. None of this came from a company building the perfect system for them. It came from 13 members who had to build it themselves. That's what made 17 different, not just the music, the fact that every part of it came from them. On the 27th of January 2016, SM Entertainment founder Lee Soo-man stood at SM Coex Artium and introduced something the industry had never seen: a group with no fixed number of members. The concept was called NCT, short for Neo Culture Technology. A group with unlimited membership, split into units based on city, concept, and rotating lineups. Members could be added at any time. Units could be created as needed. The same member could promote in multiple units at once. On paper, it sounded messy. In reality, it became one of the most ambitious concepts in K-pop. NCT launched its first units in 2016. NCT U came first, with rotating lineups built around each release. NCT 127 followed, a Seoul-based unit with a more fixed lineup and a distinct sound. Later that year, NCT Dream debuted as a youth unit, originally designed with a graduation system. In 2019, WAVE was introduced, a Chinese-language unit under a separate label, focused on the Chinese market, while still part of NCT. Each unit had its own sound, its own identity, its own fan base, but they were still connected. Members moved between units depending on the concept and timing. The lines between units existed, but they were meant to stay flexible. In 2018, SM brought the members together for the first full group project. NCT 2018 combined 18 members under one release, giving a first look at how the system could work as a whole.
Hey yo, listen up. No matter what they say, no matter what they do, we gon' resonate.
In 2020, they expanded that idea. NCT 2020 Resonance brought together 23 members across 2 albums, selling 2.6 million copies in 2 months. It showed what they were building, not just one group, but several units growing together, sharing the same name. By 2024, NCT had passed 45 million total album sales across all units. Each unit filled arenas across Asia, North America, and Europe. New members were still being added years after debut, so the group in 2024 looked completely different from 2016 by design. Most groups rely on staying consistent over time. NCT took a different approach. Growth came from change. New members extended the timeline. New units brought in new audiences. But eventually, the idea reached its limit. In early 2023, SM announced the end of NCT's expansion. That decision was finalized in 2024 with the debut of NCT Wish, a Tokyo-based unit formed through the reality program NCT Universe La Start. The lineup was now set. The infinite expansion stopped, but what remained was one of the most complex concepts K-pop had ever seen. A group built on change, able to keep moving even without a fixed form. In 2017, the K-pop girl group scene looked almost the same everywhere. Bright colors, sweet concepts, choreography built to feel cute and approachable. It was working, so companies kept doing it. Trying something outside that lane felt like a risk most weren't willing to take. Dreamcatcher took that risk. Before Dreamcatcher, they were Minx, a group under Happy Face Entertainment that debuted in 2014 with the same kind of bright concept everyone expected. They weren't failing, but they weren't standing out either. Just one of many groups in the same space, making similar music, chasing the same attention. Then the company made a bold decision. They ended Minx, brought the members back, added 2 new ones, and rebuilt the group around a concept almost no one had fully committed to before. On the 13th of January 2017, Dreamcatcher debuted with Chase Me. Heavy guitar from start to finish, 7 members dressed in black, a stage that looked completely different from any girl group that year. The concept leaned into nightmares, with each member tied to a specific fear, and performances designed to feel unsettling rather than safe. Around 40 groups debuted in 2017. Most of them are no longer active today. Dreamcatcher kept going, not because the results were immediate. The early years were difficult, and the numbers showed it, but they stayed consistent. Every comeback remained in the same world they introduced with Chase Me. The rock sound stayed. The darker visuals stayed, even when the market gave them no reason to stick with it. And the concept went deeper than just sound. At their best, Dreamcatcher used it to talk about things most idol groups avoid. The Dystopia trilogy, with Scream, Boca, and Odd Eye, focused on the darker side of online culture. Cyberbullying, anonymity, online hate, mass criticism. The heavier sound matched the message, giving their music a different kind of weight. The international audience noticed early. In places where rock has a strong presence, like Europe, Latin America, and parts of Southeast Asia, Dreamcatcher connected in a different way. The sound felt familiar, and the performances carried across language more easily. By 2022, they became the first K-pop act to perform at Primavera Sound in Barcelona. Their fan base grew steadily, built more on consistency than heavy promotion. They didn't chase trends. They didn't adjust their sound to reach more people. They built one clear identity and stayed with it. That identity was a rock sound built around a horror concept that no one else in K-pop was really exploring. On the 20th of April 2024, a three-member K-pop group debuted in South Korea. The date was intentional. April 20 is Korea's Persons with Disabilities Day. Big Ocean, made up of Lee Chan-yeon, Park Hyun-jin, and Kim Ji-sok, became the first K-pop group where every member has a hearing impairment. Kim Ji-sok was born deaf. Park Hyun-jin lost his hearing at age 3 due to illness. Lee Chan-yeon lost his hearing at 11. Before this, they lived completely different lives. None of them planned to become idols. The idea started with their company, Parastar Entertainment, an agency built to support artists with disabilities. The belief was simple: music doesn't have to be experienced the same way to be felt. What Big Ocean built from that idea was something new. They introduced free soul pop, also called S-pop, short for sign language pop. Korean Sign Language, American Sign Language, and International Sign Language were part of the choreography from the start, treated as part of the performance itself. Their stages can be experienced through sound, through sight, or both. The way they perform is also different. Vibrating smartwatch metronomes help them stay on tempo. AI tools help them monitor pitch. Flashing lights replace audio cues during rehearsals. Even something as simple as crowd noise can actually make performing harder for them, and they continue through it. The world took notice faster than anyone expected. The World Health Organization worked with them on hearing health awareness. The Korean government recognized their cultural impact. Within their first year, they performed in the United States, Brazil, and across Europe. But what Big Ocean introduced goes beyond a new concept. They challenged a long-standing idea in K-pop about who gets to be an idol and what it means to experience music. With three members who experience sound differently from their audience, they created performances that ask a simple question: what does it actually mean to listen? PLAVE debuted on the 12th of March 2023, and nobody saw their faces. 5 members. 5 animated avatars in a webtoon art style. Each one a fully designed character with a name, personality, and backstory. Behind them were real people using motion capture to bring everything to life in real time. Every vocal, every expression, every moment in a live stream came from someone the audience could not see. It's important to understand what PLAVE was not. They were not an AI group. The members trained like any other idol. Years of vocal practice, choreography, and production. Some had already worked in music before debut. And they weren't just performing. The members were directly involved in composing, writing, and producing their songs. Everything behind those animated faces was still human. Their first broadcast had fewer than 100 viewers. Most of them were company staff. At that point, there was no clear sign this would go anywhere. But something started to build. The connection came from personality, not appearance. How they spoke during live streams. How the members interacted. The music they released. Most K-pop groups build that connection through face-to-face content. PLAVE built it through voice and animation alone. And it worked. By February 2025, their third mini-album, Caligo Part 1, sold over 1 million copies in its first week, the first virtual Korean act to reach that mark. They topped Melon, placing them alongside Titan groups like BTS and 17. Hybe and YG invested in the group, and their concerts sold out 11,000 seats.
안녕하세요.
유아민 지각.
좋은 아침입니다.
What PLAVE raised was a simple but uncomfortable question. Does an idol need a visible face for the connection to work?
자, 오늘 이렇게 여러분들께 어떤 모습을 보여드릴까?
The answer turned out to be no. Because the connection people built with PLAVE was never about appearance. It came from personality, from interaction, from the music itself. And that came through every time, whether the face was animated or not. In September 2022, a South Korean company called Modhouse started introducing members of a new girl group one by one on social media. There were going to be 24 of them. That number alone made S stand out. But the number wasn't the most unusual part. It was what the fans were expected to do. S wasn't built just to be watched. It was built to be participated in. Through an app called Cosmo, fans collect objects, digital photo cards tied to each member. These generate Kamo, a voting token used in events called Gravity. Through these votes, fans decide which members form subunits, which songs become title tracks, and how each release is shaped. The audience directly took part in those decisions. Members were introduced one by one across 2022, each reveal building interest for the next. Subunits started forming before the full group ever came together. So when the first full group release finally happened, there were already multiple units active at the same time, each with a different style voted by fans. That flexibility allowed S to move across genres without feeling disconnected. The same members could appear in a slower, emotional track, then return in a high-energy release with a completely different concept. And what kept everything connected was the structure behind it. On the 8th of May 2024, all 24 members stood on stage together for the first time. The moment was called Assemble 24, and it took 2 years to reach. The album entered Billboard's World Albums chart, and for fans who had been involved from the start, it felt earned. The results followed. Later that year, the fan-formed subunit Visionary Vision released Performante, selling over 300,000 copies within days. It showed that a fan-driven structure could work not just creatively, but commercially. In just a few years, S had already brought their system on multiple tours, performing through both full group stages and rotating subunits. 24 members, a system shaped by fans, an audience that had been involved from the beginning. There's no other group in K-pop that works like this. It asks more from the audience than just listening or voting on charts. It asks them to take part in how the group grows. And enough people chose to do exactly that. What S showed is simple. A K-pop group doesn't have to be something you just follow. It can be something you help build. 6 groups. 6 completely different answers to the same question. 17 asked what happens when a group creates everything itself. NCT asked what happens when a group has no fixed limit. Dreamcatcher asked what happens when a group commits to a sound no one else was choosing. Big Ocean asked what happens when people the industry had overlooked decide to step in. PLAVE asked whether a face was ever really necessary. And S asked what happens when the audience takes part in building the group. None of these groups were built around just releasing a song and moving on. They were built around an idea. Sometimes it was about structure. Sometimes it was about concept. Sometimes it was a question no one else was asking yet. K-pop has always been good at producing music. These groups were trying to build something else. a different way of thinking about what a group is, who it belongs to, and what it can be. The music was never just the point. It never was.